Welcome to Green Crush. Listen to this guy. This is an 81-year-old man who happens to work in the, I don't know if that's the right word, work. He's a parliamentarian in the UK, and his name is Paul Flynn. And Paul Flynn got up in the House of Commons, as they do, and he stood up and he said this. Now, the reason I'm going to play this is because I recently, on one of the shows, criticized the law. I used the F word, an advantageous use of the F word for that particular law regarding the use of cannabis. But now listen to this guy, Paul Flynn, 81 years old. He's the shadow leader in the House of Commons.
I had an email last night, which I greatly welcomed, telling me there's going to be a documentary, a drama documentary based on the life of Elizabeth Bryce, and I gave a little whoop of joy. She campaigned to this house under the name of Claire Hodges. Wonderful woman. She was a television producer. She actually translated the Noddy Tales into Latin, among many achievements. But a wonderful, vibrant woman who was suffered severely from multiple sclerosis. And she came to this house, and together, collaborating with her, we committed a terrible crime on the terrace of this house, because I supplied her with a cup of hot water into which she put cannabis, and she drank cannabis tea. Now, according to the rules of this house, the policy approved by the government and sadly by the opposition as well, she was liable to go to prison for 7 years for that. I mean, I probably would be accompanying her. But I think we have to say to those who put up with the barbaric stupidity and cruelty of government policy that denies seriously ill people their medicine of choice, we've got to call on those who are in this position to act in a way of civil disobedience. Elizabeth Bryce went to the Parliament in Belgium, spoke to the Parliament in Belgium, and within months they changed their policy in that country. We know most of the countries in the world allow this most ancient of medicines, been used for 5,000 years in every continent in the world. It's used for medicinal purposes. But I would call on people, and I know we're not supposed to do this as members, to break the law, to come here and use cannabis here and see what happens.
Hey, Paul, right, that is how you crush it. Paul Flynn, a politician in England. I wish we had anyone with any measure of that testicular fortitude right now in Canada. There's a couple of people like that in the States, but they're wrong. Um, this guy is, I'm proud of him. He's actually recommending, and you can hear the other MP. Oh my, no, don't break the law. Very entertaining to listen to. So thanks, Paul Flynn. Thanks for helping everyone understand that if there's something that can save your life or help your life immeasurably, no one else, whether they're wearing a necktie or a taser or a black robe, can tell you you can't use it. So we're taking some example from some politicians. Paul Flynn, you are one. Thank you very much. I'd like to, and it's so British too, you know. It's not just, it's come on up to Parliament and smoke a joint. He wants her to come up and drink tea. That's the way the protest would have to go there, and a lot of other places. Here, they'd want to smoke a joint, but there they have to drink some tea on the steps, and he feels like he could have gone to jail afterwards as well. Because that's the law being wrong. This is what I'm trying to make sure everybody understands, that when I say I have a healthy disrespect for the law, it doesn't mean I'm a rampant idiot. It means when you can see the law right in your face as dumb as hell, you have to say, well, that's not right then. Sorry. Not going to pay attention to that. That's a bit of stepping outside the box. I realize that. But anyway, thanks for listening to the show. This is episode 3. We don't have any cameras this week. It's a different episode. The cameras went away. And so a bit of the game plan has gone away. But we've gotten some great response for the first couple of shows of Green Crush. What are we crushing? Well, it's green. The green is crushing the cancer. The cannabis green is crushing the cancer, and it's also crushing the laws that prevent the access to that same cannabis. I can't believe they're having a cross-country spiel fest. These politicians and folks with hunches and notions coming across and sitting down and telling us how it's going to go down. Doesn't seem like anyone is really on the other side given enough time with these people. When I say these people, I mean these governmental agencies, police, actors, whether they used to be cops or not. I mean, you could say Bill Blair's a politician now, but Bill Blair is a cop. You know, when the prime minister quits and when the president quits until he's 100, he's still Mr. President. People call Mr. Jimmy Carter the president. Once you're the president, you're the president. Once you're Bill Blair, a cop who presided over the arrest of so many people doing what they now want to do, have the right to do, will continue to do. You can hardly trust this punk to shepherd in any fair play across the board for the future. I don't understand why people don't fight this stuff, or maybe they are and no one's hearing about it. That's what this show is about. I am so tired of hearing through the entire journey that I've had from healthy to sick as hell and back, that this stuff should be illegal. This stuff being cannabis. Everything has a good and a bad aspect to it. I mean, you could have a nice window keeping the cold on the outside, keeping you warm on the inside. But as soon as I break that glass and raise a triangle to your throat, what about the children? Children and glass and tools and power tools. This whole thing is it's getting out of hand because no one is speaking up on the side. Not no one. There's a lot of great people out there. A lot of great people out there, but you don't really hear them unless you're looking for them, and the government doesn't really want you looking for them. They want you listening to Bill Blair. And Jane Philpott. Do we get to choose what we're going to fill that pot with? Jane. They're so self-righteous. I mean, I might sound like I'm self-righteous, but I'm right. I was dead on a slab, folks. We'll get into a little bit of that later. I like to rehash a little bit of it every single day. It might sound a bit repetitive, but when you realize it's all you were going to have left and you were supposed to have expunged and expired long ago, and there are people getting paid, wearing neckties, telling us we can't have this thing that's extremely beneficial. I'm all done with the suppression and the repression of the knowledge. I'm all done. So, let's get into my credibility as someone to speak on this particular topic because what I am not is a scientist. I am not a scientist. I didn't go to science school. Yeah, I know. I didn't go to science school and I'm not well read. And even though I've read lots of those things, I don't consider it to be well read because I don't really understand it. I didn't take all of the biology classes that helps one realize that by the time you take a certain amount of cannabis, which has been illegal for 100 years, and you could probably discern I'm a little bit pissed off about that, especially the last 4. Those are the 4 that I've been dealing with it personally. First as a bit of a hope, and then a bit of a lark, and then a bit of an actual remedy. A remedy for cancer. Now, that's my song. I had cancer. I wasn't given any options of any measurable decency whatsoever. Even the mainstream options that they offer people were not available to me. I was too far gone. So I'm going to address a little bit of that today because of I found my case coming up in a very strange website. You know, you do research to try to put things together, and my name came up, and so I read it, and it was on a Christian website. So I'm going to address that. I don't know how they heard of me, but I guess they do their research. And what we're going to get to now is that I didn't die, and here's why. So I found this thing on a website called BibleLife.org/prostate. Well, if I'm gonna creep into a website, that's the one. It says, and the reason I'm bringing this up is I've said this a lot of times to people individually, in small groups, and larger groups, in family settings, and campfire settings, and um, various, sports team settings after, playing a game and sweating it up and then hearing like, "Hey, was that really true what happened to you?" And I've had to go into a lot of times, and that's another reason I wanted to do this show because I can't really get into it every single time I see someone. It's exhausting and it's sometimes painful, and there's no sense saying it 100 times when I can say it when I can say it on this show. Green Crush, thanks for listening. We have some great news in the way of events coming up. Karma Cup, I'm going to be talking about that later, and Puff Jam. You wanna get to these events, folks, because you probably have, and I'm even talking to the smokers of pot, you probably have a cannabis deficiency. It might be why you're not feeling so well. Might wanna look into that. It's illegal, though, but do it anyway. Okay, so here's what it says. Canadian comedian Alan Park cures stage 4 metastasized prostate cancer with cannabis oil. Pretty close, kind of misleading. I understand some of this might have been my own fault. I'd like to go back and clean some of it up if I can. So to get specific, um, I don't recall doing an interview with any of these folks or have anything to do with it. So here I get to see from both ends of the stick a story that doesn't that I didn't, trigger on the one end, but I'd like to clean it up on the other end because it's pretty close, and it reminds me of things that, were blown out of my memory, thankfully so in many cases. It says, Alan Park had fully metastasized stage 4 prostate cancer that had spread to his hip bones, causing terrific pain. That's the whole sentence. While that's true, it had also spread to my inner pelvis, my knees, my ankle, my sternum, It was first activated in the ribs because I was in the gym doing an over the head, dumbbell exercise, make your jokes, and, at a weight I wasn't anywhere near going to have any trouble with, the rib just popped out, one of my left ribs popped right out, and I thought I broke a rib, and I kind of did, but that wasn't the extent of the damage, obviously. Um, so yeah, it had gone to more places. It was all over the place, as it turned out. It was in my shoulders, particularly on my, a shoulder that I had already done damage to in 2 different ways. Once I had pulled that shoulder out, and another time, I on the same shoulder, I had, a broken collarbone, not a shoulder, but anyway, that was the area on that side of my body that was really getting painful. So there it was, causing terrific pain. So you could just say that's 2013. His PSA level was 700. That's true, but it's also, it's not the highest I've ever been. And I'm not trying to make a pun on the word high because this is a show about cannabis. I'm just saying it was higher than that. It was just shy of 1200. I know there's a lot of guys maybe driving right now, maybe truck drivers. If you've any idea what a 1200 PSA is all about, it feels like your bladder is one of those giant barrel-shaped coffee drinking things that those truck drivers have, and there's force in it, like a soda stream pressure kind of kicking force, and it just feels like the biggest piss you've ever gotta take, and when you finally get to the bathroom, out comes like an eyedropper worth of urine, and then you're back to feeling like, "Oh, okay, there's a little relief," and then doesn't take long for that gigantic how do those guys drink that anyway? That's amazing to me. I think some of them must be peeing in them. Okay, so the PSA level was 700. PSA is this prostate-specific antigen. You need to know what that means. If you've got a guy in your life or you are a guy in your life, you need to know what that means, okay? And, so my doctor, who shall remain nameless for a while, said that the surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy were of no avail. He was pronounced terminal. Oh, it's so weird to read that. It's in the third person because 'cause I'm saying it, and it says, "He was pronounced terminal." Yeah, I was pronounced terminal. Alan Park had decided to try cannabis oil even before his dreadful diagnosis. This is true. After many months, this happened to me when I was sitting in the waiting room. Sitting, I was a full size 6 foot tall grimace wrapped around the steel, unbelievably uncomfortable steel sitting area poles on the chairs and benches of a particular downtown hospital. Um, so even before that, so then it says after many months of self-treatment, he is totally pain-free and living a normal life. Well, with a PSA reading of less than 2. Well, that part's true. I'm actually at 1.05 last time I looked, which was in June. Actually early July, so I'm right up to date. Let's go back a little bit though. After many months of self-treatment, that's true. I'm totally pain-free. That's true. Living a normal life, that's not true. That's not true at all. Um, it's okay. I'm not complaining, but I would not call it normal. Unfortunately, he failed to state in the video how much cannabis oil he had taken and how much he continues to take in a preventative maintenance program. Okay, that's why I really wanted to address this because yeah, I did in the video in all of the videos I've done, I didn't believe I got specifically down to the dosage, but obviously that's important in my case. I'm only telling you about what happened in my case. I'm not saying, and so this is how much you should do. There are other people that do that. I'll direct you to them if you like. But I did not state in the video how much cannabis oil I had taken and how much I continue to take in a preventative maintenance program. Okay, so let's get to that. The course of Rick Simpson oil is 60 grams of oil. Okay, it's kind of like milliliters, but it's a little bit different. And I don't even get into the math and I don't worry about it. 60 60 grams of oil. That's approximately one plant once it's taken down to its essence with one of the solvents that you can use. There are many. You just use one per. I used alcohol initially. I used 99.9% alcohol to take it down, to take the cannabis. It's like you're making tea. This is very simple stuff. There's an inundation of how-to videos on YouTube, although they look a little cleaner on Vimeo, yeah? But look at them on YouTube. It's very simple. If you know how to make loose leaf tea and you know how to boil down a sauce, those are basically the 2 skills that you're putting together, and you're being careful. If you were to do this on your own, which if I could get in trouble for saying, I'm not saying right now, but if I don't get in trouble and I wouldn't need to be in any kind of pickle, then I am kind of saying that you might want to take a look at it. It's not hard to do, and it's better than dying. So far, although that takes us back to the normal life claim, which which is more an inference, or maybe I felt that way at the time of the video, but definitely not the case. Okay, so the expected amount of this oil is that you're going to be taking 60 grams of the oil. So a gram is about 32 grains of rice, uncooked, say, basmati rice. 32 grains of that is approximately a gram, fits into a syringe. Amazingly, it fits into a small vitamin capsule because they're a lot wider than the syringe. And there's a lot of different ways you can store it, and now this guy's gonna say, "Well, he didn't say exactly how he carried it around." So I will say that, you have to measure out a gram a day, and at the end of 90 days, you should be significantly well ahead of where you were when you started. Why 90 days for 60 grams? Okay, that's easy because it takes a while to acclimatize to the potential to the potency of the. See, on my other show, I would have edited that out. I would have taken it out. But this is I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it in. This is raw organic stuff. Okay, so basically, you need to take some time to slowly acclimatize through the various stages of the cannabis oil getting more and more intense. And if you do it too quickly, you will get too high and you will get confused and you might black out and you could fall down and hit your head. So, in that way, it is dangerous and you should have somebody with you when you do it for that reason. But you gradually work your way up, and that's why it takes 2.5, 3 weeks just to get the first gram into you because the amount of oil I'm talking a pinhead. People don't believe me when I say a pinhead. Like in sewing, a pinhead, that's the first dose, and you are going to feel it. Okay, so that's what I did, sir, at BibleLife.org. Okay, so now I have not failed to state, I have definitely gone specific to you. As far as the preventative maintenance program, good call. Didn't think that would be the case at first. I was far more optimistic at first, and I didn't even finish the course. Didn't finish it. You know what your doctor tells you about that kind of thing. You're supposed to finish the medication, and I guess I should have finished the medication, but the truth is I was cooking it at home, and it was a very cold winter that winter, and I was getting away with cooking it while it was so very freezing cold. But once it started to get warm into the 3rd month of the into the 3rd month of the treatment. I was feeling great. I thought I can take time off. I've caught up. This is obviously incredible, and I decided to, not finish. Unfortunately, the cancer came back. So, when I say cure, I never say cure personally. If I do, it's a misspeak, so I'll put that on the table right now. I'm not saying I cured my cancer. Other people are saying that. I'm not saying you will cure yours or anybody can cure theirs. What I'm saying is, I was given no choice. I went to this because it was an option that resonated with me and it seemed to make a lot of sense and there was no other choice. And I thought, I might as well have a fun time. If I'm going to friggin' die, might as well catch a buzz, right? And that's what I thought I might do is catch a buzz and ease some of the pain and cut some of the nausea. And that's true. That did happen. There is much symptomatic relief, and that's where the government really likes to hang their hat these days. They don't like to get into the curative aspect. But I don't say cure because I just don't know if it's ever gonna come back or not. I don't know if my maintenance doses that I do are necessary or not, because I'm not going to not do them. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. So I'm still doing it, and, I don't do it all the time. I do it every once in a while. You will come across means and ways of designing your very own, preventative maintenance program, available where preventative maintenance programs are sold. And, so it says here that the expected amount, as stated by others, is 1 or 2 grams per day. Well, yeah, just 1. In divided doses, well, you can do it like that. You could do it all at once. What I found is with people using a gram a day who are not comfortable with cannabis, they didn't really smoke in high school or at wherever people come across this stuff. They find it very unsettling a lot of the time, especially if they take too much. Definitely don't take 2 grams a day. My goodness. But what you can do is if you're one of those people, you may turn around and go, you know what, I actually really like this. But if it's keeping you from taking the medicine, it's a little more complicated. But I've had success with this with several people that I've talked to about it. Is that you can take a small dose, like 6, 8, 10 times a day. Like once an hour, you take a tiny little amount every couple of hours. I was doing, most of it just before I went to sleep, and then, some in the morning, some in the afternoon, and then the last time around, you just take it all at once in the morning, and it wasn't, we'll get into this later as well, but it wasn't really affecting my perception of, whether I was high or not. It was definitely affecting my perception, but I wasn't high per se. I know that people will criticize that and doubt that. I don't have any problem. I can hear them screaming right now, but what I mean is, when you smoke a joint, the typical stereotypical smoke a joint, man, and then your eyes get all, like, bloodshot, and they get high, and you're into Pineapple Express and Half Baked and all those kinds of movies. Um, while that is an aspect of this, sensation, it certainly isn't the totality of it. So, hopefully that helps over there at BibleLife.org. Um, and yeah, I don't know where they got this thing where it says I would eat it with a piece of cheese before before bedtime. Um, I don't know where that cheese stuff came in. I mean, if they showed it to me and I'm saying the word cheese, that's incredible. But anyway, 1 gram is about 16 doses, 32 doses. You start off with a pinhead. I'm serious about it. Um, so now that's what those guys were talking about, and they say in this particular, thing then he goes off into his own work, which I've also verified is pretty accurate, so I'm gonna spin the rest of this out, it's worth taking a look at. The expected amount, as stated by others, is 1 or 2 grams a day in divided doses, starting with a drop or size of grain of rice. eaten with cheese before bedtime or a cracker. Any way you can get it into your body without smearing it all over your teeth or something. To get it right inside you right away. We'll talk about suppositories later. Um, the marijuana high will require that a person take time off work and not drive a car or operate machinery. That's true. When you're high, you can't do that stuff, and you shouldn't do it when you're high, is what they're saying. Very contentious topic. Thanks for listening to Green Crush. Green Crush with Alan Park. We're going to be talking about how cannabis can crush cancer and the laws that prevent the access to the cannabis. Okay. It says here that cannabis oil prevents and cures cancer in several ways. The cannabinoids differentiate between healthy cells in the body and the cancerous cells. Now, that's what chemo is supposed to be doing. You would hope, but it doesn't do that. It just flattens everything. Doesn't differentiate at all, and then you just hope that the good guys come back to life while the bad guys stay dead. And how often does that happen? The cannabinoids attack cancer cells by destroying the mitochondria, which is the energy-producing structure within each cell. Mitochondria. This is a big word. I don't mean it's a $10 word, an exciting, big, long word. It is that. But it's also very important to understand the word mitochondria if you are stricken with this disease. mitochondria. Mitochondria. Look it up. Okay. The cannabinoids stop the formation of new arteries to the tumor, thus depriving it of energy. Can chemotherapy say that? Can it stop the formation of the new arteries to the tumor? You ever see that when the cancer takes on a life of its own and really starts to divert the energy from the body? This stuff can actually reverse it. Well, the sooner you get on that, the better. But it can happen. The cannabinoids stop the formation of new arteries, depriving it of any energy. I just said that. That's how important it is. I'm repeating myself. Nice cover. The cannabinoids turn down vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF. That is a signal protein produced by cells that stimulates vasculogenesis and angiogenesis. It's part of the system that restores the oxygen supply to tissues when blood circulation is inadequate. Cannabinoids stop or reduce the oxygen supply to the tumor. The tumor shrinks instead of growing. That's what you want. Who helps us do this? Cannabis. What's cannabis' current state right now? Illegal. How fucked up is that? Big time. Really fucked up. It's the part they don't mention in the Cross Canada tour. They like to mention all kinds of things about how it's bad. They don't like to talk about how it can save your life and open your mind. So let's go to this segment. I'm going to call it what would be a good name for this? Reefer Madness. Yeah, that'd be a good name. It's already a movie that came out in the 30s. When did that even come out? It was so funny. I saw it as a teenager, right after smoking a joint, actually. I thought it was hilarious. At the time, now it's sad because we haven't really gotten past that. It's the same thing. Reefer Madness was a propaganda film designed to make the ingestion of cannabis make you look and be and act so crazy that obviously it was a bad idea to have it. So on that note, let's go to NBC4. And that's in Columbus, Ohio. So it's a real station, folks. It's not even fake news. This is from July 26, 2017. Colorado District Attorney. Oh, that's Floyd. Colorado District Attorney says So did I say Columbus? I guess I did. Settle down, you spunky little dog. God, he's going to wreck this whole recording. All right. Colorado District Attorney says marijuana is the gateway drug to homicide. What? Okay. And then for a picture in the story, they have a guy, just some hands, I think it's a man, rolling a joint. Very creative. And here we go. Colorado Springs, Colorado. From WCMH, TV4, NBC. Here we go. A district attorney in Colorado has caused controversy after saying marijuana leads to homicides. He says, marijuana is the gateway drug to homicide in our community and across our state, and people need to start recognizing that, said the 4th Judicial District Attorney Dean May, according to KKTV. May made the remark after more than a dozen people were arrested on federal charges after they were reportedly operating, dun dun dun, an illegal marijuana business. The Southern Colorado Cannabis Council responded to May's comments with this statement. Study after study has shown that there is no correlation between cannabis use and violent crime. Close quote. The group is asking May to retract his statement or prove there's a connection between marijuana and homicides. Of course, that's the last line of the story, because there isn't really a connection between murdering people and chilling out. Okay, so that's reefer madness. It still exists. We're in a state that's doing very, very well with the funding from the sale of cannabis going into various means. I don't know what they're using it for. Maybe we'll get somebody on the line from Boulder to tell us all about it. But they're doing fine over there. Now you got this nut bar saying that pot. And you know, the other thing is this guy's probably using it, and he's probably some kind of lunatic. And you know how it is with Republican, they get really like anti-gay kind of thing. And then the next thing you know, they're found in a bathroom with like 15 Boy Scouts. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So this guy probably smokes joints all the time at home, but he doesn't want other people to have that fun. I think he should listen again to Paul Flynn. Yeah. We're going to have to keep that. I think we're going to have to keep that Paul Flynn stuff. Okay, so now we're going to move into a section that is, I'm just going to buzz through a quick headline that I mentioned it on the last show, episode 2, but all across the country, they're arresting people in dispensaries for selling cannabis. Now, I personally don't care whether you're buying it for medical use or personal use. You should be able to buy it from anyone who's willing to sell it. And looks like the official folks are starting to feel the same way about this, over top of the because this is the general inconsistency problem that I have. In Toronto, the arresting efforts are called Project Claudia. Claudia means lame. Are they picking on those sick and needy, or is the project just lame and they know it? This is how lame this project is. They've been arresting people consistently ever since it started. Back in, I guess it was early last year, early 2016, maybe 2015. I don't know how long, probably forever. But Project Claudia they've been arresting people. And, but now the very strange thing is happening where nothing comes of this. So, for example, here's the record.com from Kitchener, Ontario. July 21st, a provincial court judge granted an absolute discharge to a young Kitchener couple who were running an illegal marijuana dispensary in Waterloo, Ontario. Justice Colin Westman said, nor And Shady Loka, hope I said that properly, Louka, committed an offense of compassion when they operated a medical marijuana dispensary in uptown Waterloo. I didn't know there was such a place. And sold pot to adults with medical marijuana licenses. So this is where the police, the mindset of the cops are at, and the mindset of the federal politicians. The justice said that these people committed an offense of compassion. How could that even be a thing? Oh, that's awfully kind. You'll have to do 5 to 10. How can you have an offense of compassion? That's some really crazy words put together, some normal words put in a crazy combination to justify a criminal action by one of the biggest gangs in the country. Because these folks were operating a medical marijuana dispensary in uptown Waterloo, and they sold pot to adults with medical marijuana licenses. These people have already taken the act of asking the government their permission to smoke, and they've gone through the proper channels, and now these cats are trying to buy some stuff, and the cops are gonna squish them out? So there's one good justice, Colin Westman, who described the couple as activists in favor of their fellow human beings. When does a judge ever recognize this kind of stuff? We could have used a guy like that down in South Dakota. And they're running a marijuana dispensary was called an essentially civil disobedience. Westman agreed the couple broke the law, and a finding of guilt was issued. Oh my God. Not a finding of guilt. But the pair will not have a criminal record. You are not going to be compromised in my court. Not for circumstances like this, the judge said. Noor Luca, 30, owned and operated the Waterloo Dispensary, which sold marijuana out of a second-floor business on King Street. Her husband, Shady, was a part-time temporary employee. Okay, it's spelled Shady, and so Shady, but maybe there's a pronunciation there that escapes me, but, maybe if you're selling any kind of weed at any level, you don't need to have the name Shady. I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with it, but I can see where a lot of people would be. That Shady guy, he sells weed over there. The Lucas opened their dispensary in April 2015, and 4 months later, there's the answer to my question, busted by Waterloo Regional Police. Mummy, one day when I grow up, I want to become a regional policeman of the Waterloo area. Dreams. Dream big. Both pleaded guilty to possession of marijuana for the purpose of trafficking. So they pleaded guilty, but that's what happens in a crime of an offense of compassion, not an offense of passion, but compassion. And yeah, she also was packing gun near their home. She was admitted to Shady, also pleaded guilty careless storage of a 9mm Glock handgun in their home. Anyway, the Crown wanted $10,000 in fines and convictions. The Crown! These fellas that represent the Queen of England, fascinatingly lingering on. $10,000 in fine. I like the way this judge. I can't believe this guy. What's the good chance you're going to get this guy? These folks were helping other people. The community wasn't harmed here. This is what now the lawyer is saying this. Defense lawyer Sean Safa, representing Shady, said the judge was fair to the accused and ruled that the running the dispensary was an act of compassion. They were helping other people. The court heard the couple started the business after a serious car crash in 2015. They both suffered from chronic pain because of their injuries, and Shady's been unable to work. So it goes on. You can look it up. It's a true story. The point of which is fuck the law. So now let's get to the yeah, they got discharged. And oh, we got a couple more of these silly things. This is where the police don't know what they're doing. This is where the police are in sync with the law. They're not in sync with the law. What do we call this thing? Cops and truth. Which is it? One or the other. Here's another stupid story of police oppression. RCMP detains senior in Hay River. You know where that is? If you're listening to us from outside of Canada, trust me, I don't even know where that is. I think it's in Saskatchewan. Oh gosh, no, it's in the Northwest Territories. Oh man. Hay River. No wonder I've never been up there. This guy's a senior. He's selling legal cannabis oil. Is that a thing? At a town market and was the cop was yelling at the customers that if they didn't leave, they would also get arrested. That's what the vendor says. Hay River, Northwest Territories. The RCMP barged in on a senior citizen selling cannabis oil at the Fisherman's Wharf Market last week. As it turned out, the oil is legal to sell. But don't get your shit together before you start harassing people and ruining their lives. Jerry Miller, 67, sells low THC cannabis sativa seed oil through his company. Let's plug him here. Medmar Natural Products, MEDMAR, and the second M is capitalized. He has been selling the oil since March 2017. He's based out of High Level, Alberta. This was the fourth time he has set up a booth in Hay River and his first run-in with the police over the product. He said they surrounded his booth, read him his rights, and asked him if he wanted legal representation. Miller requested a lawyer, but said the investigation proceeded anyway. Hey, you want a lawyer? Tough shit. I didn't know this until later, but the RCMP had a complaint saying that we had told someone that we were selling bud marijuana in bottles, which never happened. That's a total fabrication. But he had the complaint, so he had to follow it up. So follow it up and ask him a couple of questions. Ask him if he's selling that. Don't just start arresting him because you think something. Especially with the marginal IQ of a police officer is somewhere around 100. He's telling the customers to get lost. So that's another dumb police activity. Then we're going to get into premiers want more clarity on legalizing pot. They say the 2018 deadline may be unrealistic. Is that what they think? All right. Well, let's get to this one now. From Edmonton in the Toronto Star, it says Canada's premiers have warned Prime Minister Justin Trudeau they may ask him to delay the legalization of cannabis until more questions are answered about public safety concerns. Very concerned they are. They don't seem to have public safety concerns about every single thing, but they certainly do here. These issues have to be addressed by the federal government in order for us to meet the deadline, Alberta Premier Rachel Notley said Wednesday as the Premier's conference ended. We will move forward as quickly as we can, depending on the federal government. In their final communique, the Premier said they are concerned the federal timeline of next July 1st may be unrealistic. They stated a failure to properly deal with the provincial questions about traffic safety, enforcement, taxation of cannabis, public education campaigns, which should be the first thing, and if it was done properly, you wouldn't need that other shit. They say it's going to require an extension of the implementation date. Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister, who proposed a one-year delay to his fellow premiers, said the issues are too important to rush into legalized sales, with provinces deciding how cannabis products will be sold and what the age of majority will be. Okay, so I can see the tugging around on the age of majority, but I love how these punks think they're going to get to tell everyone how it's going to get sold. They're just taking this thing that's a plant and they're turning it into something even more repressive and difficult to work with than it is right now. It's becoming legal. There should be fewer police interactions with it. You know, the way I have an old racing car set, and I never get in trouble using it. I had it since I was a kid, but I never get in trouble using it because it's not illegal. And there's no enforcement necessary. You just play with it. It's a toy. And this stuff is soon to be, it's not gonna be legal, it's gonna be regulated, it's going to be worse. We had Russell Barth on last week, and he was explaining that either way, this bill is in trouble because if they push it through, it's a nightmare, and if they don't, the Tories will kill it, and we'll be right back to where we started. So that's why I'm trying to let me bring this right back down to where it was supposed to start. This is about using the fourth door to get to the fifth stage. I just need to keep going around and telling this story one more time, but there was no choice for me. So I'm done talking to people who criticize me for not listening to my doctor. If I did, I'd be dead. I did the best I could. I listened to him tell me there was nothing available for me. But they're saying they have one chance to get it right. Like, they don't have one chance. You can just stop being a jerk. Trudeau, the prime minister, said that the federal government is standing firm with plans to table it and make it available next summer. So let's figure about let's see who this Brian Pallister is. This is the main guy offering. Oh, the offering the 1-year delay because he's not sure about certain aspects of it. But just before we get there, London, Ontario have charged an 88-year-old man. You can't do that, man. London police have charged an 88-year-old man and a 60-year-old man after they were caught with pot in the downtown core. Are you kidding me? I'm almost 90. I got a joint. You're going to put me in jail? Police say, one of the most useless sentences ever put together. Police say 88-year-old Roy Rosso and 60-year-old Michael Giannette were charged jointly by members of the Community Foot Patrol Unit who were conducting a drug trafficking investigation in downtown London. It's not really trafficking, okay? It's not downtown London. There's no such thing as downtown London in England. It's downtown London, this tiny little town in Ontario. The pair face charges including traffic in a Schedule II substance, contrary to Section 5.1, et cetera. Senior citizens. Guy's buying a couple of joints. Get off of his case. Ask him if he served in the war. Now we're going to move on to this particular one. Police drop many charges in May 2016 pot raid. Why is that? I'm going to bring it up every time it comes up. I know I talked about it last week, but this is ridiculous. They're busting people, getting everybody's name on the ink blotter, and they just throw the charges out. It's nonsense. And it's all because this prime minister who promised to bring it in, the legalization, is promising to enforce the law on marijuana, which is really cannabis, until the day they change. That's insanity. So that means that there's going to be a guy going to jail for possession of marijuana or selling it or whatever it is on a Thursday. And then on a Friday, a guy just like him is going to be making money selling it. Can't do that, Justin. I mean, you can, but God, you shouldn't. It's so ridiculous. This stuff can save your life, and it's fun. What's the problem with it again? Who knows, but let's have a great time with it at Puff Jam. It's the family gathering. It's the 4th annual Puff Jam. It's a beautiful thing, this time in Burlington, Ontario. At 6501 Springfield Road, Mount Salem, Ontario. We'll give you the postal code, and you can set your GPS. It's N5H2R5. Get your tickets, bands, comics, good times, great products, cool people, folks that get it and they understand it. That's Puff Jam, the 4th annual family gathering at Burlington, Ontario. Bring your vans, bring your campers, bring your frisbees. I got one that lights up. That's how old I am. I could throw a frisbee. 15-year-olds stare at it for a few seconds and then they run off to chase a Pokemon. Get out to Puff Jam in Burlington, Ontario, August 11th, 12th, 2017. Happy to see you there. Puffjam.ca for tickets. I'm gonna stuff a cat down your throat. Puffjam.ca for tickets. Check that out. Oh, yeah, this is a fascinating story. This is also in the Toronto Star, also from July. Now, I've been going on about these arrests, and then nothing happens, and then they let them go, and then the judge lets them go, and then everybody realizes it's okay, and then we still have our prime minister on the cover of the Rolling Stones telling everybody, hey, it's still illegal. My dog is getting right out of hand right now. I shouldn't travel with him in a suitcase. But with all of these arrests adding up to nothing, all it's doing is taking up time, officers' time, where they could be spending it, I don't know, whatever else they do. Different drugs, actual poisonous, hard drugs. There's all kinds of things they could be doing, but instead they're letting people go and they're not really pressing charges and they're making sure that everything disappears. And then at the same time, you got this thing. Toronto Police Union says staff levels at crisis point. Union calling for an end to police cuts. Of course, the union wants that. They say that officers are overburdened. Toronto police spokesman says public safety isn't at risk. The union representing Toronto police is alleging that staffing cuts have reached a crisis point, leaving officers burnt out and the public at risk. Toronto Police Association launched a website Monday saying the force has nearly 500 fewer officers than it did in 2010 and may cut another 400 by 2019. And if you're legalizing cannabis, that's exactly the way it should be going. But in the meantime, if these really are their numbers, what the hell are they busting people for that they're later going to let go? Something strange is afoot there, I guess. Then we have this punk, Cops and Truth, telling us Regina's police chief. This is another town in Canada, Regina. It's in Saskatchewan. He says the hidden costs of marijuana legalization are going to be the real problem. We know alcohol can cause problems in domestic relationships. Marijuana is no different, says Evan Bray. He is braying, all right. The planned legalization of marijuana next year is concerning to the Regina Police Service, its chief says. This is in the cbc.ca website. Possession of recreational pot will become legal in Canada in small quantities on July 1st, 2018. Because I can walk down the street with a bundle buggy with 6 2-4s in it and bottles of Jack Daniels and wine, it's okay. But these guys are going to tell me how much cannabis I can carry around. I don't think so. That would presumably mean fewer people will be charged with possession offenses. There's your big problem there if you're a cop. But Chief Evan Bray says even more widespread use of marijuana may actually mean more work for the police. We are worried that it's going to have a negative effect on the community. We're prepared to work hard to see that it doesn't. Why don't you just sit down and take a fucking chill pill? But it's going to be work, and it's going to take resources. For Bray, it's not a question of if the legalization of pot will be costly, but how much, both in terms of money and workload. He said there will be costs associated with enforcement, and legalization will also bring with it a number of potential hidden costs in the form of social issues that would fall to frontline officers to handle. Yeah. This is another guy getting in the way of something that can save your life. Evan Bray, go Bray somewhere
I
else.
think we have to say to those who put up with the barbaric stupidity and cruelty of government policy to act in a way of civil disobedience. We know most of the countries in the world allow this most ancient of medicines, been used for 5,000 years in every continent in the world. It's used for medicinal purposes. But I would call on people, and I know we're not supposed to do this as members, to break the law, to come here and use cannabis.
Now we're getting into the serious problems, the taxations. I'm going to leave that for another time. Mayor of Toronto wants to tax it, so by the time it's federally taxed, provincially taxed, city tax, entertainment facility usage tax, and on, it's going to be $100 a gram. And that'll mean that's not how it's completely and exclusively delivered. Okay, so the Karma Cup. The Karma Cup is an elite medical cannabis and hash edibles competition. That's right. So the Karma Cup 2016 was held in Toronto. And 2017, it's also going to be held in Toronto, I believe. The location is Toronto. Yes, it is September 9th and 10th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Tickets are available at their website, thekarmacup.com. You can enter to be a judge. You're going to be judging sativas, indicas, all kinds of things. These guys are the nerds. They are the I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I don't have a clue when it comes to this. These guys grow such incredibly powerful strains, and they get right into the science of what it's like to come up with the best, most efficacious strain whatsoever. High CBDs, high THCs. I'm going to say this all the time. I'm not an advocate of taking THC out of the medicine, unless you're a little tiny girl from Colorado named Charlotte and similar folks who've gone through this. But we're going to get into what Brian Pallister said in a little bit, because he's one of the guys that wants to block this thing on out. So, but I just wanted to plug the Karma Cup. That's on September 9th, 10th, and it's going to be, you can get tickets at a lot of different locations. Planet Paradise, Vape on the Lake, fun place. Can Do, CANN Do. The Underground Cafe. Go to that website, thekarmacup.com, and check it out and go there and learn how to do. I should really learn how to do this stuff. I mean, I've just been using it and borrowing it and trying it myself, but usually from someone that really knows what they're doing. But I would like to get back to this Brian Pallister situation, because Brian Pallister is the premier of Manitoba, Ontario. Ridiculous idiot. Manitoba, Canada, beside Ontario. It's our neighbor to the west. And he says it's time to take a deep breath and put pot on the back burner for an extra year. He's trying to persuade his provincial and territorial counterparts at their annual conference to roll it back. To increase the chance of avoiding the, quote, hodgepodge of different provincial ages of majority and regulations now seen with beer, wine, and spirits. I would hope we could learn from that and not create that for cannabis, he added, acknowledging age of majority and regulations such as where pot will be sold or under provincial jurisdiction. He says, there are too many unanswered questions, too many issues that have not been addressed for us to rush into what is an historic change about public and traffic safety, health impacts, and more, including ways of measuring cannabis impairment for drivers. This is going to be the big question. But the Saskatchewan premier says his province is working toward the deadline, but wouldn't mind an extension because there are a lot of moving parts, he says. But Pallister saying there's too many unanswered questions, too many issues unaddressed to rush into historic change. That's in the Star. That's what Pallister said. And so I didn't really know much about Pallister, so I decided to look him up. Now, here's a guy that wants to understand things, wants to know how things work before committing to those things. But listen to this from the CUPE Manitoba site, though. Speaking about unions, okay, we can be okay with the police union, but not okay with CUPE? No, I think we have to be okay with CUPE. The Canadian Union of oh gosh, now I'm going to get in trouble because I'm not going to do a redo on this. CUPE, it's a big union where the folks work. It says Pallister's P3 schools plan lacks transparency and accountability. This is the same guy that wants transparency and accountability across the board for cannabis and saying it's not going to work, etc. I know it's slightly off topic, but I didn't say we were going to stick to cannabis every step of the way. Listen to this. Brian Pallister, Premier, announced the construction of 4 new schools in Manitoba to be designed, built, financed, and maintained through a public-private partnership P3 model. He's just going to rush in with that. It always costs the public more when that happens. The public pays for the stuff, then the private company owns it, and then you have to pay the private company for access to the thing you paid for when you were publicly funded. You know what I mean? Okay. So, anyway, Pallister isn't telling the whole story when he tries to pitch P3s to Manitobans, says Kelly Moist, president of CUPE Manitoba. P3s in other jurisdictions have cost more in the long run, with less accountability over taxpayers' dollars. The Auditor General of both Nova Scotia and Alberta have raised serious concerns with the use of P3s in education in those two provinces, citing excessive costs, failure to meet contract requirements, lack of transparency, and insufficient proof that the projects provided value for money. The same guy that wants that to go ahead is calling out cannabis as something he doesn't know enough about. Pallister's plan to introduce a finance-maintained P3 model doesn't make financial sense, as government can borrow at lower interest rates than private companies. P3s will also cut corners to save money for themselves at the expense of the infrastructure they are conveniently paid to maintain. So I would say right there that Brian Pallister's credibility is out the friggin' window.
To those who put up with the barbaric stupidity and cruelty of government policy, act in a way of civil disobedience.
But it didn't stop there. Here's a blog called blackrod.blogspot.ca. Okay, so he's from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he says, this is on May 2nd of this year, TikTok, the clock is running out on failing Premier Brian Pallister. The public would be better served by a discussion of who will replace Brian Pallister as leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, and hence become the Premier of the province, because Pallister's numbers coming up fast. Next year, his future will be determined PST, that's a provincial sales tax hikes by 1 percentage point, which doomed the NDP government, and a failure to reverse the hike will end Pallister's premiership, except he thinks he's got 4 more years to deliver on the campaign promise. So he's not a great guy. He's in a bit of trouble. And then I found this website without even trying. I mean, gosh. This is called Shit Pallister Said. So here's what he's got to say about a few things. This is a funny little site. I am copying what's known as a woman's answer, isn't it? It's a sort of fickle kind of thing. That's when he needs to explain how he can be a federal politician one day and a provincial one the next day. So that's shit that Pallister said. I really don't like this guy. I never even heard of him or really cared about him, but he's got a bit of a thing with women, that's for sure. But enough about Brian Pallister. Shut it off, pal. We don't need to hear about you anymore. You've been crushed. Let's get back to the reason I do this. From cancerresearch.uk, I'm going to read this again. Active chemicals in cannabis have been shown to halt prostate cancer cell growth, according to research published in the British Journal of Cancer. When was this written? Released August 19, 2009. Researchers from the University of Alcalá in Madrid tested the effects of the active chemicals in cannabis called cannabinoids on 3 human prostate cancer cell lines called PC3, DUA45, and LNCAP. The prostate cancer cells carry molecular garages called receptors in which cannabinoids can park. That's my last name, by the way. The scientists showed for the first time that if cannabinoids park on a receptor called CB2, the cancer cells, let me hear it, stop multiplying. And they're not adding, but they're definitely subtracting. But Dr. Leslie Walker, Cancer Research UK's Director of Cancer Information, warned patients against smoking the drug. She said, "This is interesting research which opens a new avenue." Yeah, okay. But now we're talking about the oil. We're talking about the magic of how well this shit works and gets into your life. Meanwhile, at the cannabist, apparently the Cannabis.co says the UN Drug Office can't find a single cannabis drug death despite it being most widely consumed drug on this planet. This is from June 28th this year. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, has released its 2017 World Drug Report covering 2015 statistics from around the world. The report finds that cannabis is the most consumed, most widely cultivated, and most confiscated drug the office tracks. Yeah, the most widely consumed drug. I think we're number 7 in Canada as far as how many people consume the stuff. Isn't that incredible? Number 7, because it actually cures. What does cure mean? I'm going to have to spend some time on that word later. All I can tell you at the end of the day is I have taken the 4th door to the 5th stage, and I have crushed cancer because I was guaranteed a December 2014 funeral. So anything and everything that happens after that is fair game, not a mistake, something I'm going to do forever, regardless of what anybody says about it. And there's a lot of different reasons. Let's close out with this one. Once again, going back to the endocannabinoid system, you have a respiratory system, you have a cardiopulmonary system, you have a nervous system, you have a digestive system, and you have an endocannabinoid system. And if you think that's a bunch of bullshit, you're wrong. Here's an article from a website called nursemanifest.com. Nurse Manifest from 2015. The title of the article, The Endocannabinoid System, What Nurses Need to Know, an introduction. Medical cannabis is now legal in 23 states and Washington, D.C., along with recreational cannabis also being legal in several states. Many patients and families are now relocating to Colorado and Washington State as marijuana refugees, knowing they can freely and safely access cannabis as medicine in these recreational cannabis states. Nurses may still wonder, how is cannabis medicine? As nurses, we have a lot to learn about cannabis, including how it works in the mind-body-spirit system. You can tell this is a nurse blog, not a doctor blog. And how we can best advocate for and support patients who could or do benefit from this medicine. Last spring, I witnessed a brief presentation being given to nurses around medical cannabis use, and it was obvious from the questions asked by many of the nurses that the social stigma around marijuana was alive and well. Would these nurses be so reluctant to accept and support medical cannabis use if they truly understood the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, which was discovered some time ago with Dr. Ralph Mechoulam, Faulkner, 2015, being a partner in this area in the mid-1990s. This is the dude from Israel back in the 60s who identified THC as a thing. Hey, there are 20,000 plus scientific articles written about the endocannabinoid system, though it has been many years since the discovery of this body regulatory system. Most nurses know very little, if anything, about it. That's true from some of the conversations I can recall. Truly, this is a problem. Nurses are more likely to know the Xaralto lawsuit phone number by heart over the benefits of the endocannabinoid system. Here we go, folks. We're going to close the show out on this little piece of news, okay? The endocannabinoid system, a functioning ECS, is essential to our health and well-being. Endocannabinoids and their receptors are found throughout the body, in the brain, organs, the pancreas, the liver, the connective tissues, the prostate, the bones, the adipose tissues, the nervous system, and immune system. We share this system in common with all other vertebrate animals and some invertebrate animals. Cannabinoids support homeostasis within the body system. It's why I'm still here. The ECS is a central regulatory system. Cannabinoid receptors are found throughout the body, and they are believed to be the largest receptor system in our bodies. Cell membrane cannabinoid receptors send information backwards from the postsynaptic to the presynaptic nerve. CB1, found primarily in the brain, and CB2, mostly in the immune system and in the bones, are the main ECS receptors. Though several more are currently being studied. The exogenous phytocannabinoid THC, which means it comes from without your body, or the psychoactive compound in cannabis, works primarily on the CB1 receptors, hence the high feeling in the brain. While the cannabinoid CBD works primarily with the immune system and creating homeostasis around the inflammatory response through CB2 receptors and does not have psychoactive effects. And they'll still arrest you for it. Other cannabinoids and their actions are still being studied, which kind of makes you wonder why it's a Schedule 1 drug in the United States. Such as the non-psychoactive cannabinoids CBN and CBG are also found in cannabis. Our bodies react to both our own production of endogenous cannabinoids, those are the ones we do make, and to the ingestion of phytocannabinoids, the ones in plants, and other non-psychoactive plants such as echinacea. To read more about the science behind the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, the endocannabinoid receptors, here are some excellent resources. And then there's a couple of websites. One is for the National Institute of Health. They're both different articles at the National Institute of Health. How an American government on the one hand can prosecute a thing because it says it has no medical value, and on the other hand have reams of scientific data showing that it does, I have no idea. But I'm just going to close out now with a little word as we listen to the music on the way out of here about what homeostasis is. Cannabinoids promote homeostasis at every level of biological life, from the subcellular to the organism, and perhaps to the community and beyond. Here's one example: autophagy, a process in which a cell sequesters part of its contents to be self-digested and recycled, is mediated by the cannabinoid system. While this process keeps normal cells alive, allowing them to maintain a balance between the synthesis, degradation, and subsequent recycling of cellular products, it has a deadly effect on malignant tumor cells, causing them to consume themselves in a programmed cellular suicide. Doesn't that sound fun? Cancer meets its programmed cellular suicide. Oh, by the way, that's illegal. Fuck you.
We know most of the countries in the world allow this most ancient of medicines, been used for 5,000 years in every continent in the world. It's used for medicinal purposes. Well, I would call on people, and I know we're not supposed to do this as members, to break the law, to come here and use cannabis.
The death of cancer cells, of course, promotes homeostasis and survival at the level of the entire organism. I don't know if you can tell that I'm passionate about this, but I am very passionate about this. Cannabinoids support apoptosis and suppress cancer tumor angiogenesis. Apoptosis. So that's it, folks. That's another episode of The Green Crush. It's not really The Green Crush. You keep saying that, just supposed to be Green Crush. People are going to say it's one or the other. I don't know. It doesn't matter. What matters is the crushing and the green. And just before we go, I'm going to lay on the definition of apoptosis one more time because it's a fun word to say. It almost makes you want to go and eat something. But from dictionary.com, apoptosis is a normal, genetically regulated process leading to the death of cells and triggered by the presence or absence of certain stimuli. And in this case, we're talking about cancer cells. That's the crush. That's who we're taking down. Thanks for listening, and partake of the green. It'll change your scene. I'm going to venture here and say that your tank is low. It's like dipping an oil stick in the car at the gas station. I'll bet you yours is low. Might be why you have that headache or that fibromyalgia or that weird pain in your side that doesn't really go away. Try this before you need it. I wish I did.